She was digging alone on the hill, hands gripping the cold metal of the spade. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the grass. Each thrust of the spade sank deep into the earth, pulling away dirt and revealing little more than stones and roots, but she kept going. The rhythm felt like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. A man appeared at the edge of the hill, drawn by the sight of her labor. He paused, watching her for a moment, then walked closer. Curiosity flickered in his eyes, mixed with something else, concern, perhaps. He asked, his voice gentle but firm. She paused, wiping sweat from her brow and turning slightly to face him. Her brown hair, tied back, slipped a little, framing her face. The expression in her eyes was complicated, both focused and weary. "I'm digging for something that was lost," she said, her voice low, almost hesitant. He considered her words, glancing at the surrounding hills. A treasure. His tone was teasing, trying to lighten the heavy air that hung around them. "No," she replied, her voice sharper now. She turned back to her work, digging deeper into the soil, each movement carrying the weight of memories she wasn't ready to share. The man shifted his weight, unsure. After a moment, he stepped closer, the ground crunching beneath his feet. He pressed, his curiosity winning over. A sigh escaped her lips, heavy with the burden of unspoken words. "It's for my brother," she finally admitted, almost as if the words were weeds choking her throat. He repeated, surprised. She took a deep breath, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. "He was my best friend. We grew up here in this town. We'd race to the top of this hill every day after school." Her eyes glazed over, staring at the ground as her mind traveled back to those carefree days. The man nodded, sensing the shift in her mood. He asked softly, "We thought we'd always have those days," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But life," she paused, collecting herself. "He got sick, a rare disease. It came out of nowhere." The man felt the weight of her words. "I'm sorry," he said, and it felt inadequate, like the words were just falling flat between them. He could see the pain etched in her face. "It's been 2 years," she continued, digging fiercely into the earth as if attacking the soil could ease the pain. "My family, they don't celebrate anymore. They pretend like everything is fine. They don't talk about him, but I can't move on." He scratched the back of his neck, searching for the right thing to say. "So you're digging for..." She paused again, her spade frozen midair. "I believe that if I dig deep enough, I can find something of his something real." She looked at him, eyes fierce with determination. In her voice he heard a mix of longing and desperation. He stepped closer, his presence steadying. He asked. "I would hold it," she replied, voice breaking slightly, emotion spilling over. "I would remember him the way he was, joyous, full of life. I need to feel connected to him again." As she spoke, her tone shifted. It was as if she were speaking to the universe, demanding answers. The man took a deep breath, glancing at the spade in her hands. "You know," he said, "sometimes what we're looking for isn't buried in the ground." She looked up, surprised. "No, it's not about forgetting. It's about remembering, yes, but also about healing," he said carefully. "Your brother would want you to be happy. He wouldn't want you to dig endlessly, hoping to find something." She dropped the spade and sat back on her heels, her chest rising and falling like a wave crashing against the shore. Tears brimmed in her eyes, threatening to spill. How can I live without him? And there it was, the raw, aching truth. Loss can twist us, pulling us to places we never intended to go. It can consume us. The man, feeling the gravity of the moment, knelt beside her, letting silence fill the air for a beat. "Sometimes we keep digging because we're afraid that if we stop, we'll lose them all over again," he said softly, a kindness in his voice. "But healing means finding a way forward." She wiped her tears, surprised by the clarity in his words. "It's so hard," she confessed, her voice trembling. "By honoring their memory, not through despair. Share your memories with others, celebrate the moments, even if that means letting go of one small piece of this pain," he suggested, glancing at her hands that had clutched the spade so tightly. She pondered this, the heaviness beginning to lift. "But how do I do that?" "Start by talking about him." He offered an encouraging smile. "Perhaps write about your memories or gather friends and family to share stories." She let the idea simmer, her mind racing through all the times they had shared, the laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams they'd spun together. All of it felt like an ember glowing within her. Perhaps she didn't need to dig to find him. He was still there in every smile and in every memory. She looked at the man beside her. "You're right," she said quietly. "I think I've been digging for peace, but maybe." He nodded, a warmth spreading in the air between them. "You're already starting to heal. This is part of the journey, this digging, but it doesn't have to be alone." A silence settled around them, a comforting truce with the shadows of sorrow. She picked up the spade again, but held it differently this time, as if it were not a tool of grief, but a bridge to understanding. "I think I want to find a way to celebrate him," she said, her voice steadier now. "Exactly," he said, standing alongside her, a sense of purpose radiating from him. "And you don't have to dig alone. Let others help you find those pieces, both tangible and intangible." As she looked at the tangled mass of roots and stones, she felt a shift inside her, recognition that she had the power to shape her memories and honor her brother's spirit in a way that filled her life with hope. "Thank you," she whispered, voice filled with a new light. "No need to thank me, just remember, healing isn't a straight path. It's messy and full of twists and turns, but you're not alone." She smiled softly, the tension in her shoulders easing. I think, he smiled back, genuinely this time, the warmth of connection sprawling out into the fading sunlight. As they stood together, both feeling a little lighter, she realized that perhaps the digging had not only unearthed dirt, but it also led her to something unexpected, newfound hope. Holding onto it tightly, she took a step back from the hole, setting the spade down for now. The hill hadn't just been a site for her search, it had become a place of transformation, a place where grief could meet healing. And as dusk began to envelop the horizon, the two of them, a stranger and a sister, watched the sun dip beyond the trees, feeling the weight of the past ease into a gentle understanding of love, loss, and life ahead. She was digging alone on the hill when she suddenly paused, feeling the weight of a presence behind her. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting an orange hue through the trees surrounding her. It was a quiet place, peaceful even, but that peace was shattered by the scraping of metal against rock. A voice cut through the silence, probing and curious. She turned to see a man standing a few feet away, hands casually shoved into his pockets. His dark hair caught the light in a way that made him seem more like an observer of life than a participant. For a moment, she hated that he had interrupted her, that he had pulled her from the rhythm of her digging. "It's none of your business," she replied sharply, brushing a bead of sweat from her forehead, annoyance creeping into her voice. But the man didn't move away. Instead, he stepped a little closer, something unwavering in his gaze. "Looks like you're working pretty hard, why not share it?" She narrowed her eyes, weighing her response. On the surface, it seemed like a harmless question, but it felt like an intrusion into her solitude, her grief. "I'm digging for something important," she muttered, eyeing him suspiciously as she plunged the spade back into the earth. "Is it a treasure?" he asked, his tone light, almost playful. "No," she snapped, unable to keep the sorrow buried within her. She pulled the spade out and looked up, fire in her gaze. "It's not treasure." The words hung between them like a thick fog. She resumed digging, trying to ignore the way his eyes seemed to bore into her. With each thrust of the spade, she pushed deeper into the memories, each clump of dirt revealing more than it concealed. Her brother's face, his laughter, the way he used to pester her while they played out here on this very hill. He ventured, sensing that there was more to her story. She felt a rush of anger. She dropped the spade again, fighting against the urge to shut him out completely. "You think it's simple? Listen," he said, taking a small step forward, earnestness etched in his brow. "Didn't mean to offend you." For a moment she hesitated, caught between her frustration and the unexpected softness in his tone. She took a deep breath, the weight of her heart pressing against her chest. "I'm digging for closure," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. The man softened at her words, an understanding flickering in his eyes. And just like that, the floodgates began to open. "You got sick," she said, the words pouring out as if they had always been waiting just under the surface. "A rare disease. One moment he was climbing this hill with me, and the next he was gone, no warning, no fairy tale ending, just..." She felt the familiar sting of tears and blinked them away. "I thought that if I dug here I could find something he left behind, something that would make him real again," he asked gently. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice small now, "but I need to try." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Closure isn't found in the dirt, it's found in the memories we carry. The stories we tell." Her eyes flashed with frustration. "I know about loss," he replied simply, his tone steady. "I lost my sister a few years back, sudden illness just like you. I get it, believe me, but I learned that digging physically can't bring them back." She took a step back from her digging, letting the spade hang beside her. "It's a start," he said, lowering his voice. "It turns grief into something beautiful. You can't silence your brother, and you shouldn't have to. Speak his name, tell his story, honor the moments you had together." His words settled over her like a warm blanket on a cold night, uncertainty twisted inside her. "But how?" "It feels like the world wants me to forget, to move on, my family. Maybe they don't know how to," he offered. "People often shy away from grief because they think it will make it worse." She was silent, the adrenaline from her anger slowly fading away. The thought of gathering her family, sharing memories about her brother, felt like a monumental task, but maybe he was right, a journey not through the dirt, but through the memories they crafted together. She asked suddenly. He shook his head, an amused smile flickering across his face. "No, that would be silly. I spent too much time wallowing in sadness, thinking that shutting people out would help. It didn't. I started going through her things," he explained, his voice becoming softer, laced with tenderness. "The photographs, the clothes." He paused, taking a steady breath as if the air itself was heavy with memory. "I found things I thought forgotten, pieces of her life that couldn't just be buried." She leaned in, captivated. "It opened a door," he said, his gaze drifting past her to the horizon. Talking about her, remembering her laughter, what she loved, how she saw the world, it made her feel alive again, even if just for a moment. They stood in silence, an understanding starting to take shape between them. She found herself imagining her family sitting together, sharing memories, laughing at their brother's antics, feeling him in the room again. She asked, her voice quaking slightly. "You will," he assured her. "You carry him with you all the time." She felt her heart rate slow. The idea was both daunting and comforting. The thought of actually taking a step back from the pain felt almost revolutionary. She could journey into her past, not with a shovel, but with her words, her stories. With newfound clarity, she took a deep breath. Maybe I don't need to dig anymore. You're getting there, he said, his eyes lighting up. There was silence again, but this time it felt different, soft, almost hopeful. She lifted the spade one last time, looking at the hole she had created. The earth turned and disturbed. She marveled at it, the symbolism of her personal journey. She murmured, more to herself than to him. Telling a story starts with a single moment, he urged. She closed her eyes, venturing into the past. An image burst forth, her brother, cheeks flushed, running toward her with a goofy grin, his hair flying in the wind. There was this one time we raced to the top of this hill. I was determined to win. I wanted to prove I was just as fast as he was. I was so focused on the finish line that I didn't notice the rock in my path. Yeah, she smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting. He encouraged her, enthusiasm glowing in his eyes. You remember. That's beautiful, what a moment of joy. She felt the warmth radiating from his words, igniting those gentle memories she thought were lost. I can almost hear his laughter right now, she said softly, biting her lip to hold back tears. Imagine sharing that with your family, he prompted. A sense of pressure began to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope. She nodded, inhaling deeply, excitement threading through her heart. You're right, I could gather everyone and share stories. I could honor him in ways I hadn't yet imagined. The man smiled brightly, triumph clear in his eyes. Now that's the spirit. Remember, grief is not a monster, it's a journey. As they stood together on that overlooked hill, bathed in twilight, the space between them faded, spinning from strangers to allies in a shared understanding of love and loss. She looked back at the hole she had dug, suddenly aware that it wasn't about searching for something buried in the earth, but about discovering something alive within herself. Thank you, she whispered, feeling a mix of gratitude and hope. He simply nodded as if he already knew how important this moment was for her. You're not digging alone anymore, just remember, share those stories. With that, the sky deepened into twilight, the world around them seemingly quieter and more vivid. She would climb higher toward her memories, and as she did, she felt the warmth of a sibling's love shining bright even through the cavern of grief. That hill, once a place of solitude, had transformed into a sanctuary of connection, a starting place for healing and remembrance. As the night fell, she felt a blooming within a seed of hope that, for the first time in a long while, made her believe in tomorrow. She was digging alone on the hill, sweat trickling down her brow, spade biting deep into the earth. Each strike sent dirt flying, a flurry of brown breaking apart into the crisp morning air. She wasn't just digging, she was on a mission, a quest for something intangible that weighed heavier than the dirt she cast aside. A sharp sound broke through the steady rhythm, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. She paused, glancing over her shoulder to see a man standing at the edge of the clearing. He looked at her, curiously tilting his head. He asked, his voice cutting through the solitude like a beam of light. She turned back to her work, annoyance flaring. Sharing her purpose felt like tearing open a wound that had barely begun to heal. It's none of your business, she snapped, plunging the spade deeper. Seems like it might be important, he said, stepping closer, his tone a mix of care and concern. I've never seen anyone digging like this alone. The weight behind his words made her pause. She looked at him, then back at the mess she'd made, a chaotic pile of dirt and stones. I'm looking for something, she replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. He asked gently, hands in his pockets. There was no judgment in his eyes, just a sense of genuine curiosity. The question hung in the air like smoke, wrapping around her throat. She clenched her jaw, grappling with her emotions. My sister, she finally whispered, the words slipping out like a secret she had kept too long. I'm sorry, he said, shifting his weight as if absorbing her pain. Car accident, she interrupted, her voice sharp with pain. 5 years ago, she couldn't finish the thought, the memories swirling in a storm within her. The man nodded, his expression softened by understanding. That must be incredibly hard, he said quietly. And you're digging for her. She felt the raw emotion brew within her, wanting to either pour out like a flood or remain locked in a dam she had built over the years. I want to find her, she admitted, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over her. Something, anything that can help. Maybe, he said, kneeling beside her, careful to avoid the scattered dirt. But do you really think you can dig her back up? The question echoed like a distant thunderclap, and she felt herself stuck in a web of uncertainty. I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. I'm trying to feel connected to her again. I get that, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. There was a sincerity in his eyes that made her chest ache, but digging won't fill that void. She looked at him, confusion fighting with the shadows of sorrow. The connection, he said, gently pressing on. You think finding something physical will make you feel whole, but maybe it's the stories that will bring her back. She shook her head, frustration bubbling up. I don't know how to share the moments, they just feel lost. It's okay to feel that way, he said, his voice steady and calm. Grief is messy, but let it out. Talk about the little things, what you loved about her, what made you laugh, the memories that made you cry. Suddenly a memory flashed in her mind, the two of them laughing in a sunlit backyard, sharing secrets beneath the stars. We used to talk for hours, she recalled, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she feared the memory would slip away again. About everything, our dreams, our fears, he encouraged, his eyes brightening. That's it, those moments matter. You don't need something physical to feel that connection, remembering her in that way. His words washed over her like a balm, gently healing the edges of her heart. But I still feel like I didn't do enough, she said, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. No one can say goodbye perfectly, he replied, leaning closer. And that's okay, life is too chaotic for perfection. What matters is what you do with those memories now. As she listened, she felt something shift within her, a flicker of hope amidst the shadowed grief. Maybe she could still connect with her sister. Maybe this was the spark she needed. She asked suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess herself. A smile broke over his face and he nodded. Absolutely. They sat in the dirt, talking for what felt like hours, her words tumbling out like a waterfall, stories flowing between them. She found herself recounting tales of her sister's laughter, the way she always took the last piece of cake, or how she once sang so loudly during a road trip that it got them both pulled over by a curious officer. As she spoke, the weight on her chest began to lift, and she watched the layers of grief peel back like old paint, revealing fresh colors beneath. With every story, she felt her sister alive beside her, the echoes of laughter dancing in the air. And every time we'd jump into a pool, she'd make the biggest splash, she recounted, her voice gaining strength. I would come up gasping for air and she'd just laugh. He said, leaning in, that's how you remember her, keep that joy alive. They continued, digging deeper not into the ground, but into the fabric of her memories. She recalled her sister's favorite songs, the way she would twirl around the living room, dance like nobody was watching. The more they shared, the more the heaviness of loss transformed into warm tendrils of fondness. The pride in her voice ticked up a notch. He encouraged, you're retracing the threads that kept you close. With each new story, she felt the bond strengthen, not just between her and her sister, but with the man who had ventured into her solitude. A realization dawned upon her. She wasn't alone anymore. She had begun to weave a tapestry of memories that would carry her sister's spirit through time. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. As they wrapped up their session of shared memories, the air felt charged with something new, a blend of healing and connection. I wish I had done this sooner, she admitted, the night creeping in around them. Sometimes all it takes is a little push, he said, his voice steady, filled with compassion, and a little faith in the power of memories. You've helped me so much, she said, looking at him with newfound gratitude. I came here to dig for something and found a connection I thought I'd lost forever. Maybe I don't need to search anymore. Exactly, he replied, standing and brushing off the dirt from his jeans. Let her stories flow, let them echo in your heart. We should do this again, she suggested, her heart swelling with warmth. Share more stories. Count me in, he agreed, a genuine smile lighting his face. As he started to walk away, she felt her heart swell with a mixture of hope and new purpose. She had begun to understand that life was a continuous blend of joy and pain, but sharing her sister's memory could bring light even in the darkest corners. She called after him, voice steady. Jake, he replied, turning back with a smile. I'm Anna, she said. Thank you, Jake, really. Anytime, Anna, he said, his voice warm. Remember, digging isn't always about the ground. As the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving a palette of warmth, Anna stood on the hill, surrounded by memories waiting to be shared. She felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. She knew that every story she told would create a bridge that kept her sister alive in her heart, and so she wouldn't dig alone anymore. She had a path forward, one built not from dirt, but from love, laughter, and cherished memories. Anna took a deep breath, let the cool night air fill her lungs, and closed her eyes for a moment, picturing her sister dancing in the fading light. The journey of healing had only just begun. She was digging alone on the hill, her spade slicing through the cool, damp earth, each stroke a defiant statement against the weight of her grief. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the landscape, but she hardly noticed. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of laughter and life sounds that felt a million miles away from her. A voice suddenly broke through her thoughts, disrupting her solitary focus. She barely glanced up, her heart pounding in her chest, half annoyed at the interruption. She shot back, hands gripping the handle of the spade tightly. A figure stood a few yards away, looking both concerned and intrigued, his brow furrowing slightly. It seems like you're on a mission, he said, stepping a bit closer, the crunch of gravel beneath his feet echoing in the quiet. Her eyes flicked to him, measuring his sincerity against her irritation. I'm looking for something, she replied, disappointment flickering in her voice. She didn't want to share this lonely journey with a stranger. He asked, his tone gentle but persistent. I'm digging for answers, she said, each word heavier than the last, her heart opening just a fraction. He pressed, still standing there, the afternoon sun highlighting the contours of his face, his expression encouraging. Taking a deep breath, she swiped at the dirt that had collected on her brow. I lost someone, my mother. The man blinked in surprise, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I'm sorry, he said, his voice softening. It is, she said, the emotion washing over her, the dam beginning to crack. She died 6 months ago and it feels like my world fell apart. She faltered, the honesty making her raw. I thought maybe I could dig up something that belonged to her. His expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. She exclaimed, frustration creeping in again. Isn't that what you do when you lose someone? You search for anything. The man took a step back, allowing her space but maintaining his gaze. Maybe, but more often than not, what we're really looking for is connection. She frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. And how am I supposed to do that? Tell me about her, he suggested, his demeanor shifting to that of an active listener. She hesitated, the memories mounting like forgotten treasures. Her name was Clara, she began, feeling the warmth of his attention settle over her. She loved gardening, always had her hands in the soil. He asked, leaning in. Yes, she said, a small smile breaking through her sorrow. Roses, red ones specifically. She liked to say they symbolize love and remembrance. I guess that's why I thought that if I dug here. He suggested lightly, a warm smile playing on his lips. That makes too much sense, she admitted, laughing softly despite herself. I guess I was just lost. But magic often lives in our memories, he said, his voice steady and encouraging. Talk more about her. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. She loved the ocean. We'd go every summer, just the two of us. She'd teach me how to look for shells, and at night we'd watch the stars together. Now, that's something to hold on to, he urged. The summer nights mixed with the smell of salt and the rhythm of the waves. The more she talked, the more alive Clara felt. She remembered how her mother would hum soft melodies while cooking, filling their small kitchen with warmth. And when I would have a bad day, she continued, her voice gaining strength, she would have my favorite cookies ready, fresh from the oven. See, those moments are the magic, he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, and you can keep reliving them. She felt a lightness in her chest, something bright breaking through the fog of grief. But it hurts sometimes, she confessed, looking down at the ground, fingers toying with the dirt. Of course it does. Grief is hard, it's messy, almost like trying to plant a garden in poor soil, he said. Comfortable silence wrapped around them, the reality of their shared moment sinking in. She glanced back up at him, vulnerability shining through. He hesitated, dropping his gaze to the ground. I lost my father a couple of years ago. It was sudden, and I felt like there was this impossible weight on my chest. I thought I could dig out that pain literally. I'm sorry, she said, her heart tugging at the connection forged in this unexpected encounter. He nodded in understanding. It does, but the stories, they keep us moving. As he spoke, she felt a mix of sadness and comfort. It struck her how this stranger could understand her pain, how they shared this invisible thread connecting them through loss. She asked softly. Celebrate who he was, he replied, lifting his gaze to meet hers. I talked to friends about silly memories we shared, the lessons he taught me. And suddenly she was hit with an overwhelming desire to share Clara's memory, to honor her life in a way that felt meaningful. I want to do that, she said, her voice quivering slightly. Tell stories, relive them. Just begin with anything, the small details count, he encouraged, smiling brightly again. Little things add up, like the time she made you feel like a hero or a simple memory of laughter. She took a deep breath, the air feeling lighter somehow. And if you want, he added, I'd love to join you. We can find a way to share our stories together. The idea was thrilling, a spark of hope igniting inside her. She asked, searching his eyes for reassurance. Absolutely, he replied passionately. It'll strengthen the bond. You'll find that even though they're gone, their laughter lingers. Encouraged, she picked up the spade, this time holding it with purpose. Then maybe I'll dig only when I'm ready to plant flowers, she said with a grin. He laughed, and the warmth between them blossomed amidst the fading light. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, painting the world in hues of orange and violet, she felt lighter. The journey before her suddenly felt full of possibilities rather than grief. Thank you, she said, unable to resist the urge any longer, for being here. Thank you for opening up, he replied. It's a brave step. In that serene moment, surrounded by the sounds of nature, she understood the truth. She didn't need to dig to rekindle her connection. She could cultivate it through remembrance, conversation, and love. As they slowly made their way down the hill, laughter and memory mingling in the air, Anna realized that scars can also be places where light enters. She took the first step back towards life, one story at a time, and maybe, just maybe, she had found a friend along the way, a fellow traveler through the landscape of grief and hope. Together they walked into the dusk, with stories intertwined, ready to share their hearts, their losses, and the beautiful chaos of everything that comes after. She was digging alone on the hill, the sound of her spade scraping against the rocks echoing in the stillness of the afternoon. Each thrust into the earth felt like a physical manifestation of her desperation. Dust scattered into the air, a fleeting reminder of what she was trying to unearth. The sun hung high, casting an unrelenting glare, but all she could focus on was the ground beneath her. A voice suddenly broke through the peace, sending a shiver down her spine. She stopped, her breath hitching for a moment, and glanced up. A man stood at the edge of the hill, hands in his pockets, a concerned expression on his face. She snapped, irritation bubbling up. It was bad enough to feel lost. Now she had to deal with this stranger who had intruded on her solitude. "Seems like you're on a mission," he replied, undeterred. She turned back to her digging, thrusting the spade into the soil as if the force could bury her worries deeper. "I'm looking for something," she muttered, the words escaping despite herself. He pressed, closing the distance between them. With a huff, she paused again, hands resting on the handle of the spade. "Answers," she replied, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He asked, genuinely curious. Taking a deep breath, she braced herself. "I lost my brother," she said finally, each word a tiny dagger. "He was everything to me." She swallowed hard, trying to compose herself. The man's eyes softened at her confession. "I'm so sorry," he said gently. "Yeah, you could say that," she answered, the bitterness seeping through. "He died suddenly. 1 minute he was here and the next, he was gone." As the words tumbled out, her heart raced as if trying to escape the grip of grief. The man nodded slowly, a sense of understanding glazing his expression. He asked, leaning in. "Something," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Anything that reminds me of him, a photo, a letter," he suggested, tilting his head thoughtfully. Anger flared for a moment, rising like bile in her throat. "That's what everyone keeps saying, but it's not enough. I want something tangible. I want to feel connected to him again. Maybe you're right, it can feel good to want something physical, but you might find that the real connection lives in the stories you hold," he said, softening again. She hesitated, staring at the ground for a long beat. The memories were there, swirling around in her mind. "He always made me laugh," she began, her voice gradually growing firm. "We used to have movie nights every Saturday." A wistful smile tugged at the corners of her mouth as memories unfolded. "We picked the worst horror films just to see how scared we could get." "That's beautiful," he said, genuinely invested. "I just feel like everything is crumbling into nothingness," she admitted, her bravado waning with each passing second. He asked gently, a hint of encouragement beneath his words. I don't know how," she confessed, feeling small and vulnerable. "No one in my family talks about him anymore. Maybe they're scared to bring it up," he replied thoughtfully. "Grief is confusing and people often don't know how to deal with it." As she listened, something began to shift inside her. Hope, fragile but resilient, crept into the corners of her heart. "Absolutely," he affirmed. "Those moments you shared, his laughter, his quirks, they're pieces of him that don't simply disappear." She felt tears sting her eyes, a torrent of emotions cascading through her. "It's okay if some details fade, that's natural," he said, an empathetic warmth filling his voice. "What matters is how you choose to keep him in your life. Focus on the essence." Taking a breath, she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I can do that," she murmured, feeling a sense of newfound determination bubble within. "I can share the stories." "Exactly," he said, his smile wide with encouragement. Suddenly a thought struck her like lightning. "What if we had a gathering we could share stories?" "Now that's a fantastic idea," he said, beaming with pride. She said, feeling the shift in her resolve. "Maybe I can invite the people from his school or even old friends." He nodded enthusiastically, his energy infectious. "Yes, remind each other of him, the things he loved, the moments he made people smile." A quiet moment passed between them, tethering them in shared understanding. The weight on her heart felt lighter, as if she had just taken a breath after being submerged. She asked, feeling her hope crystallizing. "Absolutely," he reiterated, his gaze steady. "Grief doesn't have to be a burden, it can be a bridge to connection." The sunlight began to soften as evening approached, the shadows lengthening around them. She looked up at the sky, pondering the overwhelming feelings swirling inside her. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "It's my pleasure," he replied with a gentle smile. "Sometimes we just need someone to listen," she asked impulsively. He smiled warmly, a twinkle in his eye. "Of course, I'd be honored to help." "A celebration," she echoed, the sweetness of the idea taking hold. "I can invite a few friends, make his favorite dishes." "Exactly. And maybe even play some of his favorite music," he added, excitement ringing in his tone. As they chatted, the plans began to come together, each new idea weaving more light into the shadows that had once consumed her thoughts. She felt herself smiling, envisioning a gathering blooming with love and laughter, a vibrant canvas of memories. "Thank you," she said again, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. "You've helped me more than you know." "It's my pleasure," he replied earnestly. "You're not alone in this. You've got a whole community that loves your brother just as much as you do." As the sun continued to set, casting deep shades of purple and orange across the sky, she felt a warmth swelling in her heart. And all this time, digging in the dirt had felt like a lost cause, the act of trying to find something that should never be found. But now, she understood that digging was not about retrieval, it was about understanding and transformation. With a renewed sense of purpose, she stood up, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I feel lighter," she exclaimed, the tension that had lived in her chest dissipating like steam. He stood too, excitement sparking in his eyes. "Good, let's make a plan." As they dove into the details, throwing back ideas and suggestions, she felt alive again for the first time in months. The thought of surrounding herself with love, laughter, and cherished memories ignited a flame within her heart. She would not let grief turn into despair. Instead, she'd channel it into honoring who her brother was and who he would forever be in her life. "Maybe we can even plant a tree or something in his memory," she said, her heart swelling. Now that's a wonderful idea, he agreed. A living symbol of your brother, she said, the excitement brightening her spirit. I want it to be a place where people can come together, where his memory can linger. And as they continued planning, the evening air filled with possibilities, the shadows faded, and in their place grew a vast expanse of hope. She looked at him, realization igniting within her. Thank you for being here, she said sincerely. It's the least I could do, he replied, a smile lighting up his face. Just remember, life doesn't just end with loss. As they made their way down the hill, the fading light bathed them in warmth, and she took each step with purpose. She had transformed her journey from despair into hope, into connection. The earth beneath her feet felt alive, as if beneath the surface stories began to stir. She understood in that moment she was not alone anymore. Through sharing her brother's memory, she could celebrate life rather than dwell in sorrow. And as twilight settled around them, the beginning of something beautiful was born, filled with laughter, stories, and the enduring power of love. She was digging alone on the hill, the sharp bite of her spade cleaving through the soil, her arms aching with each thrust. Beads of sweat rolled down her brow as she lost herself in the rhythmic motion. The world around her faded, the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves drowned out by her inner turmoil. Each scoop of dirt flying from the ground felt like an attempt to unearth a piece of her past. A voice called from behind, breaking her concentration like glass shattering on concrete. Caught off guard, she paused, turning slightly to see a man standing a few paces away. He looked curious but not unfriendly, his dark hair ruffled by the gentle breeze. She frowned, annoyed at the interruption in her solitary moment. It's none of your business, she shot back, returning her focus to the earth. Seems like it might be important, he replied, unfazed. I've never seen anyone digging alone on a hill like this. With a sigh, she leaned on her spade, her heart racing with a mix of frustration and something deeper despair. I'm looking for something, she finally admitted, her voice tight. His eyes were steady, probing but not aggressive, as if he could see through her defenses. Answers, she said flatly, though the word barely scraped through her lips. The man's brow furrowed in understanding. I'm sorry. That must be difficult, her breath caught, memories swirling around her mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. My sister died, a car accident. He nodded slowly, empathy etched upon his features. I thought that if I could dig here on this hill where we used to play as kids, maybe I could find something of her, a toy, a piece of jewelry. Anything that would make her feel close again, she confessed. He asked softly, tilting his head. Something real, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I need to know she's still with me somehow. He took a step closer, the air thick with both tension and compassion. You know, people often look for physical reminders when they lose someone, he said, but maybe the connection you're seeking isn't buried in the ground. Her fists clenched around the handle of the spade. What memories? Sometimes I feel like I'm losing them too. I can't remember everything, he asked gently, almost coaxing. She paused, the weight of his question hanging heavily in the air. Her mind began to unravel some of the threads of memory. She loved to dance, she said, her voice softening. Every Saturday we put on our favorite songs, he encouraged with a small smile. Tears welled in her eyes as the memories flooded back. She was brilliant at making everything fun. That sounds like something worth holding on to, he said, a glimmer of hope sparking in his voice. You see, you're remembering her. You've got stories buried inside you too, they just need to be told. She exclaimed suddenly, her pulse racing as she lost herself in the recollection. She devoured them. At night, she'd read to me about all these adventures, mysteries, fantasies, everything. Talk about her, share those stories, he suggested. It's not just about finding something buried, it's about celebrating who she was. You could gather friends and family and share these memories. As she listened, something deep inside her began to tremble, a flicker of light in the overwhelming fog of loss. But no one in my family talks about her anymore, she said, her voice breaking. It might be easier for them in the moment, he conceded, but it doesn't help you, it doesn't honor her. A swell of determination began to rise within her. What if I threw a gathering? His eyes widened with enthusiasm. Now that sounds like a brilliant idea. You'll create an atmosphere where everyone can feel comfortable remembering her. The simplest of ideas ignited hope within her like a flame in the dark. She was already envisioning how it could all unfold, the laughter, tears, and the stories she'd share. He agreed. She admitted, her heart a little lighter. Grief doesn't have to hold you prisoner. It can be a bridge to connection, a stepping stone to healing, he said, his tone steady and supportive. They stood in the silence, sharing a moment of mutual understanding, the weight of their exchange thickening the air. She felt her heart begin to unwrap from its tight coil, the pressure easing. She asked, vulnerability coloring her voice. Absolutely, he affirmed, nodding enthusiastically. You'd be amazed at the comfort that comes from sharing your heart. I think I'll do it, she declared, the resolve settling over her like a warm blanket. Invite my friends and family, share stories. As it should be, he said, his smile radiating kindness. You're walking a brave path, digging into those memories instead of the ground. I'd love that, she replied, grateful to have someone who understood. I want it to be a tribute. As the sun began to set, illuminating the sky in fiery hues, she felt a sense of renewal wash over her. Each dish they could prepare, each song they could play, all would be steps taken to reclaim her sister's spirit. "Let's get started," she said, her voice steady with determination. "Exactly," he replied, his eyes sparkling with excitement. With newfound purpose, they began discussing plans and ideas, discussing food options, music, and how to create a comfortable space filled with warmth and love. Everything they spoke about felt like a thread reweaving the fabric of her life, each detail an affirmation of her sister's essence. "I can already picture it," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "A beautiful night filled with laughter and tears. Yes, that's the key," he urged, "and it'll be healing for everyone." As they worked through their plans, she experienced a rush of emotions: anticipation, excitement, and just a hint of fear. The thought of bringing everyone together filled her with energy, yet she also felt the weight of vulnerability. "Thank you for helping me," she said, her voice sincere. "It's an honor to help," he replied, his expression genuine. "You're on the path to healing." As dusk enveloped the hill, she looked around, feeling the cool breeze dance around her. It seemed as if the earth was breathing with her, a reminder that life continues, even amid sorrow. "We'll plant a tree too," she suggested suddenly. "Something that will grow." He nodded, excitement glowing in his eyes. "A beautiful idea. You can choose a tree that signifies strength and growth," she exclaimed, the thrill bubbling inside her. "That will be a perfect centerpiece growing from our love for her." "Without a doubt," he confirmed, smiling. "And every year you can gather and celebrate around it." With each step they took down the hill, the road ahead felt clearer. They had transformed the act of digging into a celebration of memory. She realized that she could still carry her sister with her, keeping her alive in every story shared and every memory cherished. And as darkness kissed the horizon, she understood the essence of what it means to grieve. It's a process filled with ups and downs, but it also opens doors to connection, healing, and love. "Thank you for being here with me," she said quietly, looking at her newfound companion. "It's a journey," he replied with a nod, "and it's yours to navigate." Together they walked forward, the pale light of the moon illuminating their path. She felt alive with purpose, and for the first time in a long time, she imagined a future filled with remembrance, joy, and the lasting connection that ties the living to the ones they've lost. And she knew, without a doubt, that she would never dig alone again. She was digging alone on the hill, each thrust of her spade sending clumps of earth flying like sudden bursts of despair. It was quiet up here, save for the soft sound of dirt hitting the ground and the distant rustle of leaves swaying in the afternoon breeze. Overhead, the sky was a wide canvas of blue, but she didn't look up. Her focus was locked on the soil beneath her, as if the answers she sought were buried deep within. A voice called out, cutting through her solitude like a knife. Startled, she glanced over her shoulder and saw a man standing a few paces away. His expression was curious, a mix of concern and intrigue. He seemed like an intruder in her sacred space. "It's none of your business," she snapped, irritation simmering just beneath the surface. "Seems like it might be," he replied, undeterred by her defensive tone. "I don't often see someone digging alone on a hill." Turning back to her task, she tried to ignore him, but the question hung in the air like a ghost. She thrust the spade into the ground harder than necessary. "I'm looking for something," she finally muttered, her patience fraying. He pressed, stepping a little closer. Taking a deep breath, she paused, the weight of her grief crashing over her like a wave. "I'm looking for my brother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He died unexpectedly. "I thought if I dug here, maybe I could find something, a piece of him, I don't know." "Horrible," he said, his tone turning gentle. The air felt thick, each word a heavy stone sinking into the weight of her grief. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaky now. "I thought if I could just dig deep enough, maybe I'd find something of his," he asked, softly probing. She paused, the spade suspended midair. "I don't know," she admitted, frustration bubbling. "Everyone keeps telling me to remember him, but what if the memories fade? What if I forget digging fields?" The man crossed his arms, a slight frown forming. Her mind raced, memories flaring like sparks. "I remember his laugh," she said, a small smile breaking through the cloud of sorrow momentarily. He had this laugh that would fill a room. It was contagious. His eyes softened. "That's something special." Suddenly, she felt herself calming, the memories swirling like leaves in a gentle breeze. "We used to go camping every summer," she began, her voice steadier now. "Just the two of us. We would argue about which route to take and end up lost, but those moments, they were our adventures." "That sounds wonderful," he said, leaning closer, genuinely engaged. She took a deep breath as her heart began to open up. "He was always there for me. When I got bullied in school, he stood up for me. He'd come home with stories of how he defended my honor. He was my protector." He asked gently. "Safe," she whispered, a tear escaping down her cheek. "Then that feeling is still with you," he replied, his voice soothing. "You don't have to dig to find him. The love you felt is what truly keeps him alive." As the sun continued its descent, a flicker of light ignited within her. She wondered aloud, what if I gathered my friends and family to talk about him? "That could be a beautiful tribute," he encouraged, a smile spreading across his face. "Create a space for everyone to share what they loved about him." Her heart raced at the idea. "I could tell them about our camping trips, the times he made me laugh," he exclaimed, enthusiasm lighting up his eyes. You could celebrate him, not just mourn him. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. What if they don't want to talk about it? Grief can make people avoid the subject, sure, he conceded, but sharing stories often brings people closer. Quiet moments stretched between them, filled with the promise of healing and connection. She asked, searching his face for reassurance. Absolutely, he said. Her eyes widened in surprise. Of course, he replied, his tone steady. Even just being there to share your brother's story could make a world of difference. With every word, the tightness in her chest began to loosen. Thank you, she said, her gratitude palpable. Let's make it happen, he said with a warm smile. They started discussing plans, the evening air filled with a mix of excitement and seriousness. He suggested gathering mementos of her brother, photos, favorite books, anything that could spark memories. She felt a rush of anticipation as she imagined each detail coming together. She asked, feeling a sense of purpose surge within her. He replied, it could be a feast of memory, a celebration of life, and don't forget the music play some of his favorites. Yes, he loved that one ridiculous pop song, she laughed, her heart lifting. He said enthusiastically, it's the little things that remind us of those we love. As they talked, a floodgate opened and her memories poured out. The stories transformed into laughter and joy, with each new detail igniting more of the brother she had lost. It felt like freshly tilled soil being nurtured, creating space for new growth. She asked suddenly, her heart swelling. A tree is a wonderful idea, he said, nodding. We could plant it in the backyard where we used to play, she said, envisioning the spot. The thrill of the idea took root in her heart. Sometimes what we're searching for feels buried, he said softly. As twilight descended, the sky painted with stars, she felt lighter, freeing herself from the burden of isolation and grief. Her heart swelled with hope and anticipation for what was to come. I'm ready to do this, she said with newfound resolve. Good, he said, looking proud. You're moving in the right direction. With the final rays of sunlight fading, they stood together on the hilltop. The weight of sorrow and loss had transformed into a radiant spark of love and memory. She could almost see her brother among them, his laughter echoing in the wind. As they descended the hill, the night air wrapping around them like a comforting embrace, she felt like she was stepping into a new chapter. A chapter filled with remembrance, laughter, and a resolute refusal to let go of the love that still lingered long after his passing. And in that moment she understood something profound. Digging wasn't about finding physical remnants. It was about planting seeds of love, nurturing memories, and allowing the essence of those we cherish to flourish. Together they had embarked on a journey, one deeply rooted in connection. As the moon rose high in the sky, illuminating their path, she felt a sense of peace enveloping her heart. She was no longer alone on the hill. She had found a way to bring her brother's spirit back into her life, to celebrate everything he represented. And just like that, they moved forward, arms linked, hearts open, ready to share a love that would never fade. She was digging alone on the hill, her spade slicing through the dirt with fierce determination. Each thrust sent clumps of soil flying, the sun beating down mercilessly on her back. The hill was a quiet place, a secluded spot where she could escape, but today felt different. There was an urgency in her movements, a frantic energy pulsing through her veins. The earth felt heavy, weighted down by grief. Each scoop was an attempt to unearth not just dirt, but something lost, something she desperately needed to find. Her heart raced with every strike, the rhythm matching the emotions swelling within her. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind her. She stopped mid-thrust, surprise jolting through her. It was a man standing a few yards away, his brow furrowed in genuine curiosity rather than judgment. He looked like someone who had stumbled upon a secret, a quiet observer interrupted in her moment of solitude. She shot back, annoyance simmering just beneath the surface. I'm just curious, he said, his tone soft yet persistent. She didn't feel like sharing her burden with a stranger, but the truth bubbled up, desperate to be released. I'm looking for something, she finally replied, her voice shaking. He asked, tilting his head. My brother, she admitted, her heart tightening like a vice around her chest. He died a few months ago. He shifted his weight, stepping a little closer, concern etched across his face. A car accident, she said sharply, the memory still searing. One moment he was here and the next he was gone. I thought maybe. That's a heavy burden, he murmured, his eyes searching hers. Her breath hitching, she slammed the spade into the ground again. The frustration spilled out, raw and unfiltered. I just thought if I could find something from our childhood, maybe it would help me remember him better. He suggested gently, his voice calm. Have you thought about telling stories about him? How can I remember? Everything feels like a blur. I'm afraid I'll forget who he was, she said, her voice breaking. Then let's not forget together, he replied. The question hung in the air, and for a moment she was lost in thought. We would go hiking, she said finally, a hint of warmth gracing her features. He loved the outdoors. Great, he pushed gently, his patience drawing her in. Up this same hill, actually, she confessed, a bittersweet smile forming. We used to come here to escape, just the two of us, and feel free. We would race to the top, and he always acted like he was going to let me win, but he never did. The man chuckled softly, the sound of balm on her raw emotions. That's beautiful, she exclaimed, her heart fluttering at the flood of memories. He loved music. "Sounds like he brought a lot of joy to your life," he said, his eyes lighting up with encouragement. A tremor of gratitude washed over her as memories ignited like fireflies in her mind. "He was such a good person, always ready to lend a hand or share a laugh. Digging here might not help you find what you seek," he replied thoughtfully. "But those memories you're holding on to, they matter." Unable to suppress the swell of emotions, she felt tears prick at her eyes. "Then share them," he reiterated, his gaze steady. "Connect with others who knew him. Bring them here, share those stories." She hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. "But how? Grief changes people," he said softly. "It can build walls, but breaking them down is vital." "Maybe I could throw a gathering," she suggested, the idea sparking within her. "Invite family and friends to share what he meant to them." His face broke into a broad smile. "That's a brilliant idea." A rush of empathy surged through her, a feeling she hadn't experienced since the accident. "I could cook his favorite dishes, play his music," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. "Yes, exactly," he encouraged, invigorated by her energy. "Invite those who loved him and let the world know that he left a mark on your lives." She could feel the walls she built starting to crumble, the possibility of forgiveness and remembrance filling the cracks. She asked suddenly. "Of course," he said without hesitation, the sincerity in his tone illuminating the air between them. As twilight approached, the air surrounding them began to shift, charged with a newfound sense of purpose. Every word they exchanged turned the hill into more than just a place of sorrow. It became a backdrop for healing, for growth. The shadows lengthened slowly, and she began to envision the gathering, a space filled with shared laughter, words, and moments that would breathe life back into her memories. "We could plant a tree in his honor," she added, a smile brightening her face, a living testament to his spirit. He agreed, his enthusiasm infectious. Her heart warmed, and the pain that had felt so overwhelming began to twist into something different, an urge to memorialize, to remember, to make tangible the love they shared. "I can't believe I spent so much time digging, thinking that's where the answers hid." "Sometimes we dig for answers in the wrong places," he said softly. The evening drew on, and as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, she felt as if a fog was lifting. The weight of grief still lingered, but now it felt lighter, infused with hope and purpose. "I'll start planning right away," she said with determination, a fire igniting inside her. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass, she felt a chill creep into the air. A sudden gust of wind sent a shiver down her spine, and she hesitated, glancing back at the man. "Of course," he replied, concern flickering in his eyes. "Why are you out here?" He hesitated, the warmth of the moment shifting. "I come to this hill sometimes. It's a good place to think," he admitted, his expression clouded. As she studied him, something in his tone made her heart race. His gaze dropped, and for a moment she thought he might pull away. "Yeah," he said finally, "my sister. She died a few years ago." The atmosphere shifted as she felt the weight of his words. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "It still is," he said softly, his vulnerability breaking through the bravado. "I thought digging would help me understand too." Her heart tightened in understanding. "Maybe," he said cautiously, "but be careful. Sometimes our need to hold onto memories can turn into an obsession." She asked, confusion washing over her. "Grief has a way of consuming us if we let it," he explained, his gaze distant. "We think we are honoring our loved ones, but it can quickly turn into something darker." The weight of his warning settled heavily in the air, and unease crept into her chest. "I won't lose myself," she insisted, feeling a flicker of fear mixed with determination. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said quietly, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "Together," she replied, meeting his gaze, the gravity of their shared experiences binding them. As silence enveloped them, the world felt heavy with unresolved emotions, a knot tightening in her stomach. They stood on the hill, the darkness creeping in slowly, and as the moon began to wax, she felt a chill crawl across her skin. She asked, needing that connection, that reminder that they were not alone. "Maybe," he said, his voice trailing off. A sense of unease settled like a thick fog, and she found herself uncertain between the thrill of moving forward and the fear of becoming lost. They exchanged one last glance before he slowly turned away, leaving her standing there alone on the hill, the cool night air enveloping her like a shroud. She was left to dig deep within herself, searching for clarity amid the darkness, knowing that the path ahead was uncertain, filled with both promise and peril. And as she stared into the starry sky, she realized that sometimes the hardest battles are fought not just in grief, but against the shadows that creep in when we least expect it. Something inside her whispered that this journey was only beginning, and she had yet to uncover the truths hidden within.